Hello and welcome to Disseminate, the Computer Science Research Podcast. The podcast is brought to you by Pomtree. Pomtree are the developers behind Raftery, the open source temporal graph analytics engine for Python and Rust. Raftery supports time traveling, multi-layer modeling, and comes out of the box with advanced analytics like community evolution, dynamic scoring, and temporal motifs mining. It is blazingly fast, scales to hundreds of millions of edges on your laptop, and connects directly to all your data science tooling, including Pandas, PyG, and LangChain. Go check out what the Pomtree guys are doing at www.raftery.com, where you can dive into their tutorial for the new 0.80 release. Today is another installment of our High Impact series, and we're going to be talking to Raghu Ramakrishnan. Raghu is the CTO for data and a technical fellow at Microsoft. He's previously worked at Yahoo, where he served as the chief scientist for the portal, cloud, and search divisions. And before that, he was a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he's won many awards across his career as well. And this is just the highlight reel, but the COD Award, SIG KDD Innovations Award, and the SIGMOD Contributions Award. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be familiar with the book that Raghu co-authored with Johannes Gerke, the Database Management Systems book, which is also affectionately known as the Cow Book. So welcome to the show, Raghu.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
The pleasure's all ours. So it's customary to start off by, I've obviously given the highlight reel there, the high level sort of broad strokes. So could you kind of colour between those lines for us and tell us more about your journey so far in your own words, and kind of, I guess, at the core of that, why did you become a researcher?
So, I went to Texas to get my PhD right after I graduated from IIT Madras. And when I got to Texas, there was this organization called MCC, Microelectronics and Computer Consortium. A bunch of companies got together to fund research. And this was to compete with the Japanese fifth generation project, which you may not have heard of. But back in the day, it was seen as a threat to our technical aspirations. So all these companies got together, they funded this lab with shared IP that they could then commercialize. From my perspective as a lowly graduate student, this brought to town a group of really amazing world-class researchers. Not to mention the fact that the cafeteria there was well ahead of its time. Not only food free, not only were drinks free, but tuxedoed waiters served it to you on platters, wow. Right? So my advisor, Phil Boshath, was very generous. He sponsored me to go connect with folks at MCC. I hooked up with Francois Bansillon, Catriel Beery. And so for me, research was something that I fell into quite naturally by being around people like these, and this energy, the vision that, hey, we have a huge opportunity, a huge challenge, and the idea that researchers were on the front lines. It was all very exciting. So I jumped into the world of research and haven't looked back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So what you're working on currently today, what's your current sort of research focus?
So to be honest, I would say at this point, there are a lot of people in my team who do the heavy lifting. And my job now is to bring the refreshments.
Okay.
Help them stay on the job. Occasionally say, hey, how about looking there or looking here?
Yeah.
As CTO, the fun thing is I have a big lever. The challenging thing is knowing where to apply it, because it's really impossible to be deep across the breadth of what we do in Azure data, right? It's a group that drives everything, that owns everything from SQL Server to all our Azure services to some internally facing data services. It's a broad portfolio. So at any given time, I tend to go deeper into one or two things. And these days, I'm looking at scale out queries and transactions. I'm looking at what Gen AI means for all our data portfolio. Those two right there, data governance, the world when governance meant grant revoke statements in SQL. It's no longer keeping up with the reality that most companies have many instances of databases spread across clouds on-prem. How do you govern the whole? And that's not just an academic question, because people are realizing how valuable data is, how intrusive it can be in terms of privacy. So there are all kinds of regulations. So how do we architect governance platforms that allow people to ensure that data is being properly used? So those are a few of the things that keep me.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's some interesting things there. Definitely, the thing that piqued my interest there when you was talking is the scale out transactions. Obviously, that did pique me interest. But anyway, cool. So let's talk about, because obviously this is the high impact series. Let's do a little bit of a retrospective over your career then, and talk about some of your high impact work that you've done across your career. Obviously, there's lots of it. I mean, if I just look based off your top citations, obviously that's a very coarse metric for how to view things. But we've got papers like Birch, Peanuts, Incognito, all these sorts of names. But I kind of want to ask you, kind of, what are you most proud of in your career, and does that correlate with the work that's had the most impact?
That's a good question. I'd say there is a correlation, but probably not an exact one.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the things that stick in my memory, at least, some things are pure sentiment. Early papers I wrote with François, with Petriel, with folks in Texas, when I was working on my PhD, they mean a lot, because they meant I learned how to do research, how to get into this field. And then when I became a professor, some of the early papers I wrote then mean a lot, because now I was learning a whole bunch of different things. How to work with a group of students, how to maybe share some research directions without getting in their way. I never anticipated how much I would learn from them. Then I did a startup. Then I came to Yahoo. I transitioned to the world of industry from academia. I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, while there are some papers that I can point to as having big impact, you mentioned Peanuts, the YCSB benchmarking paper was another.
Yeah.
Early work on magic sets, or the Birch clustering algorithm. While you can point to things like this, for me, it's all about the people. I think of my work as I travel back in time, more than the technical results. The thing that comes alive for me is the people who were involved in the work I did. And I've always been lucky, I guess, in that regard, to have the chance to work with some really smart people. It's really nice people that I enjoyed being with, right? Yeah. And speaking of work, I would be remiss if I didn't say something about some of the work. You talked about scale-out transactions. So in fact, we just had our paper accepted at the upcoming Sigma Chile. So, the whole notion of how to support transactions when the underlying data is optimized for analytics, columnar in nature, spread out across a bazillion machines, with some rigorous multi-table asset semantics, right? Snapshot isolation in our case. How do we support this? And there's something that I've had the good luck to work on with some amazing people here at Microsoft. But net, for me, my career, I see through the lens of the people I work with. And the thing I'm probably the most proud of is my students. Most of them are smarter than I am. They've done, many of them have done much more impactful things than I have. And it's all because of me. I take full credit.
That's fantastic. That's a really nice, touching message. I like that. That's really cool. I did want to touch on, because I think this probably has had, of all your work, probably the biggest impact on me, because we kind of used the textbook for our database module at university, and that was the book that you wrote. So, I mean, Tell us more about the book in terms of the background of it and kind of what you think about it today. Is it still kind of, I don't know, relevant in some sense, like, or does it need updating? But for me, it's a bit timeless, right? I mean, the lessons in there kind of will stand true for a long time. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on the book and kind of what you thought about it today.
Thanks, Jack. That book cost me so much. The origins of the book really are in the courses we taught at Wisconsin. So really, while my name is on the book, all of the people who taught courses there, Dave DeWitt, Mike Carey, Yanis Ioannidis, Jeff Norton, right? They all had some part to play. DeWitt and Carey in particular shaped some of the hands-on software that we used. So a characteristic of the Wisconsin way of teaching databases was we built systems. We built hands-on systems, and our courses were built around course projects, right? Minibase, Minirow. And the book itself grew out of the course notes and the lectures. And it went through a couple of beta editions, an alpha edition, before it eventually made it out in that tow jacket. We even had a t-shirt competition for people who guessed what the cover meant.
Oh, really?
If you go look at it carefully, there is a tree and there's a bee buzzing around. So of course it's a bee tree. And like any well-designed bee tree, where are the keys? Hanging off the leaves. And how do the bees get there? They start at the root. Go there.
Fantastic. I never knew that. That's brilliant.
You look next to the tree, there's a pool. But of course, it's a buffer pool with fragments of tables in there, which are relational tables with grids and rows and columns. So I had a lot of fun, as you can tell, working terrible puns in that cover. And the number of cows corresponded to the edition. And why cows, you ask? Wisconsin, the dairy state.
Ah, okay. See, I did not know that, but there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Deep significance that you absolutely have no use for in a line of that cover. I think the book still is entirely valid for many, many topics. For many years, I resisted revising it. And then the area got away from me so fast, I didn't have time to revise the book. If I look at the last 10, 15 years, Hadoop, big data, scale out systems, cloud, separation of state and compute, so much has changed. Earlier, we talked about how the nature of governance has changed from database centric to data estate centric. The idea that database machines were dead is dead. The world has changed in so many ways. And in fact, the last couple of years, Johannes is also a technical fellow at Microsoft now. A few others with Wisconsin roots and some others. We have gotten together, we've been teaching internal courses, right? And in the course of doing this, it's given us a chance to pull together a lot of material that is missing in the house. Right? And we talk about updating the cow book. And we'd like to do it actually as something in the public domain. We are working to get all the legalities lined up, but if we can, we'd like to create this as an open source resource that other instructors can contribute, amend as they feel, can be a resource for our community. We'll see if that works out.
Yeah, well, you heard it here first, listeners. There's going to be a sequel. Fantastic. Maybe there's a sequel joke in there as well. I don't know, but anyway, cool. So, kind of going off then. So, I can maybe preempt the answer to this question, given what you said about sort of the high impact work you've done over your career and about the people. But I want to ask you kind of a few things. Really. What inspires you, and who or what has had the most impact on your career?
What inspires me? I don't know. I enjoy engaging with a problem, solving puzzles. But also over the years, if I think back, there was a time when I published extensively in the theory side of databases.
Mhm.
And over time, I've shifted to where most of what I do is much more grounded in systems. And I think deep down, even when I did theory, it was database theory. I wanted it to be tied to something that was practically relevant. And that pendulum has swung. So I moved to Yahoo in part because of that. I had a chance at some point to build things that were directly going to be engaged with by millions, hundreds of millions of people. That appealed to me. So I'd say that, like most people, the things that excite me there's been some things that have stayed constant. I like challenges, I like puzzles, but some things have also evolved, right? Over time, things like working on things that have a more practical impact, working on things that directly translate into products that affect a lot of people. And these are not all always compatible with each other. Sometimes you make trade-offs. And I made that transition. I can see that. If you think about where I am today, I'm CTO for a product division. There's an applied research group that I still have, but frankly, the bulk of my time is spent thinking about a commercial product rather than research papers. So I have come the full arc of that journey, I guess. In terms of the people, I find it hard to just name a few, but I'll just without a rank order, just off the top of my head, a few very different reasons why they influence me. Jeff Ullman has always been a mentor for me, and some of the papers he wrote on magic sets and the like were what led to my thesis research. Avi Silberschatz, my advisor, has always been someone I've looked up to. So people like that, François Vincent, Thierry, in my formative days, they mattered a great deal, and I learned a lot. When I came to Wisconsin, if I think about the faculty there, not only were they great colleagues, great researchers, you hear this very true, unfortunately often, meme that research universities in the US don't place that much importance on your teaching. This was not true in the CS department at Wisconsin, right? All of my database colleagues were better classroom teachers than me. And I tried hard, but these guys are just too damn good. We had something called the Cow Award, which students elected a professor as Professor of the Year and gave them a Cow Award. In all my 20 years at Wisconsin, for 19 of those years, I never came within sniffing distance of the cow. The last year, I think students rigged it.
Okay.
The elation present, and I won it. Okay. So if you think about it, the group at Wisconsin taught me the value of teaching.
Mhm.
Right? Students have always mattered to me, right? Every one of my students, starting with Sudarshan, my firstborn, mattered to me. And I will always remember that. They were huge. The people I got to work with afterwards, here, like I said, I could keep naming names. To me, that's been the single biggest gift in my professional career, the chance to work with some really good people and really nice people. So lots of names. I could just go through that, but I'll stop here. In terms of papers, there were a number of theory papers from back in the day, papers by Chandra Haril, papers by Ron Fagan, that influenced me, that I looked at. Paris Kanellakis and his papers. In later years, more applied papers, as you might imagine. Some of the benchmarking papers that David wrote led to my own benchmarking work. The DynamoDB paper that came out of AWS led to my interest in distributed systems, led to Peanuts. Lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be here a long time.
Yeah. Okay, one last question real quick then. And
Sure.
this would be kind of this is kind of the focus of the podcast in some sense, and you're in a good place to answer this question because you've had a foot in both camps, and that's the interaction between academia and industry and bridging the gap, and what your current position is on it, and how we can be better as a research community engaging with industry and vice versa, and what that kind of looks like at the moment, and what your take is on it.
It's a great question, Jack. And there's a related question, so I'll give you a 2-for-1. Should I do a master's or a PhD? Okay. The thing about all these questions is there's no one right answer. The only version of these questions that's ever made sense to me is, what should I do? Right? And the answer is different for every individual, right? And if you take industry versus academia, you definitely have the ability to work on a broader range of things. You can work on pretty much anything, but with an asterisk. If you're working on very sustainable topics, you typically need resources, and grant funding is not always easy to come by. So that de facto constraints you. In fact, one of my reasons for moving from academia was I wanted to work on internet scale systems. And rather than writing big grant proposals, I could get as many machines as I needed at Yahoo. But also in industry, you have access to real problems, customers, data, things that even with the best of will, you can't share back with academia for privacy reasons. Mm-hmm. So that said, I will say this. I see a trend where people from academia are moving to industry, and fewer people are moving from industry to academia. I hope we reach a balance. It's good for people to move back and forth, okay? But at the end of the day, if we don't have that strong bridge, I know people in virtually every CS department in the US, most places around the world, I have friends. And that's one of the things that I think makes me useful, that I know people in academia. Vice versa, there are people in academia that know people in industry that makes them very valuable. And I think part of it is we serve as bridges. Our students need to be educated in the things that matter commercially, because what's happening commercially defines the bow wave of our field in many ways, not always, but in many ways. And what's going on in academia can often disrupt what is going on. So think of Spark, came out of Berkeley, made a material difference in the path that Hadoop and big data systems took. Right? Hadoop itself originated at Yahoo. After the very early days, Doug Cutting came to Yahoo. That in turn influenced a lot of the work that went on in academia. This back and forth is rich. This is part of what makes our community so vibrant. So I think people should do what moves them. What moves them will vary over time, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to break out of your box. But I certainly hope that balance happens.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Raghu, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and we'll see you all next time.